administrating patients and events, and we're going to hear about how this has increased efficiency as well as transparency at CERT. I'm glad that you're all here. Please welcome them all with a big applause. Tobias, what were the names? Have fun.
Hi, everyone. Nice that you're all here. We want to tell you about what we did for the CERT to make the dispatch control easier of the people that you see running around in the vests. Global will be starting. For those who don't know the CERT, what are we doing? Who are we? Then we're going to be talking about the origins of this, how the hell told us this sticky note stuff we did in the past doesn't scale sooner or later. We're going to be talking about the architecture and design and how we use this in reality when something happens at Congress. And we're going to tell you how you can find something to experiment with and play until it's broken, because the productive instance that we are using, you can't break, please, but we've given you something to play around and hack with. Yes, so this is my part, the small CERT lexicon. CERT means Chaos Emergency Response Team. And this also highlights one of the problems. When we established this name at 19C3, and we didn't really specify what kind of emergency this would be. We didn't think about doing everything here. We're really the medical and fire protection service for middle scale and big scale chaos events. And that's important because we're in Germany, nothing works without regulation. There are things we have to fulfill. We have to tell the fire department in school, in the city, that there are enough people here and that they know where they can get help. And there were other problems like cables and everything that could break. We're all angels. We're all nerds, nerdettes. But we're also, in our free time outside the Congress, medical people, paramedics, fire response people, and emergency service people. The medical treatment of participants is really our work. Fire protection. Well, you've probably seen a little small in an ashtray. But we do all kind of technical stuff. We have also saved tortoises, so we're also animal control. You should know this is our job.
Well, broad areas of purview of responsibility and sticky notes. We've had between 500 and 1,000 cases to deal with per event, and we have 7 rooms, which have 6 treatment spots and 1 for consultation. We actually created 857 entries in the logbook of 38C3. Then we have up to 10 parallel shifts, so 10 people working at the same time for things that have to be dealt with at the same time. And up to now, quite consciously, we did all this on paper. Why did we do that? Well, it worked, and digital systems and chaos, well, that is a bit of a thing. But then we realized that people were writing more and more post-it notes at the camp 2023, and someone from a gust of wind distributed around 500 post-it notes in the area, and no one knew what to do next. And I just then said, we can't go on like this. And with Penny and Toby, the other speakers, Global said we have to make something. Do that this has to go digital. But as the CERT leader, I also want to be able to print this on a PDF as a non-computer person and file it away. Because then that is the only piece of paper that people can demand of me. I want to see all my units, what they are doing, and where they currently are, whether I can use them for something or whether they are busy already. I want to know how many patients have I got, and where do they come from? Are they coming from an outside tour? Did they walk in? How much capacity have I got left? And I want some things that happen to be logged in a so-called logbook automatically, the only official documentation that I really do need. And I threw that at everyone's feet, and after you received my wish list, surely you had to go on. I'm going to hand over to you. And yeah, the wish list escalated further and further. It was quite cool. I'm going to perhaps show it to you, the way we can work with it. And of course, at the very start, we considered, well, how can we get this in a sensible and safe way? Get this done. We talked with people from security, we talked with security experts, because, of course, these are data that have to be consistent, they have to be correct, and in part, it's very sensitive data, particularly if it comes to medical treatments. Therefore, we had to submit this talk because we want to be transparent with everyone. How do we deal with these data? What happens to you if you become a case at CERT? So we have to be sure what has to be there. We, of course, needed to fulfill the minimum conditions of the GDPR, and that, of course, will be clear to everyone, but also the guidelines, the maxims of CCC. Data minimization is better than data protection, decentralized. Of course, we had regulations to follow about documenting these things that we do, that, as Blubber said, they are really important to get the whole event actually approved by the authorities. And if something does happen, we have to be able to report in order to avoid being a legal target of legal action. And still we have to keep everything at the lowest possible level, because this is a very sensitive community about these issues. Right, and therefore we sat down and developed the TOD. What does that stand for? Well, it's one of many puns. Tod, as I say, in German is the word for death, or if it ends with a D, it's death, and if it's with a T, it's dead. Take out the H for that. It's also Tod is the old ancient Egyptian god of science, the scribe of wisdom, and the calendar. That was nice. And it's the secretary of the gods. And of course, it does have an expansion as well, which is the trouble handling operations terminal. We didn't use words like medical, but we didn't want to define the emergencies, as Blubble explained. So that's why we called it trouble handling. How did we design the whole thing? We had we made a microservice architecture with 5 services that are the core functions. We have the front end, which is written in White React after initial attempts in PHP. Thank you, Marudor, for this, helping us to take this into the 21st century. We had a REST API. Twice we did that, actually. First, for the normal data, the metadata of the actions, and separated from that, we have an API and database for everything that deals with medical issues, so that we can add separate encryption to that. The data that are less sensitive are separated from the very sensitive ones that have to be protected. We have a bit of a bunch of auxiliary things that we didn't all write ourselves. We have an importer for the Angel system, and this is where the Angel system team, and most of all Mailgel, they wrote an API especially for us to get the data in. We have an importer for the navigation system. Thank you for the nav team for implementing some last-minute features there, so that we could map the locations where we go into action. We have account and login management. So that again is sensitive data. So we had to implement two-factor authentication. And then we have a few metrics, some logging and some nice graphs. And I think until the infrastructure review, we'll hopefully be able to give you some nice graphs. And this will not be TOT specific, but infrastructure review specific. We have you can find the code on Codeberg, and it's all Dockered, so that all these microservices can be run locally for development purposes. This is not intended for productive use, though. So they are wired up in a way that it's all for development. If you want to play around, don't use this in production.
So productive, how did we do this? So we put the microservices single end in groups on separated hardware so that when you have a web front end, you don't have the data. The databases and the APIs have their own machines so that you can share the hardware machines can be shared between importers and monitoring systems. The firewalls are in different networks, and the complete setup is only reachable per cable through from the rooms of CERT. So thank you to the NOC who have enabled this for us, that we have VLANs in the CERT rooms and made it so that only we can reach this. The whole thing looks like this at the dispatcher under the table. This is a flight case because we thought in the camp whether we can use it there. Once you have to evacuate you can carry this out with 2 angels outside, put an aggregate to it, and then use it further. This is a bit of overkill for the Congress, but it's small and handleable and very transportable. So you can just simply carry it. At the dispatcher, it looks like this. On the one hand, you have C3 nav, and on the other hand, the dispatch operations center and a telephone, and then you can have fun. Of course, usually when you request data about the dispatch operations, user is requesting data, the request goes to the API, your authorization and authorization is checked. But with medical data, it looks a little different. Here, does the API test the authorization? So medical data of closed cases are only for the medical personnel and in exceptions for the dispatchers, but there is a 2-factor authentication necessary. If that doesn't happen, then a challenge is sent to the user. There is a layoff in direction in this medical API, and the data are not only encrypted on the hardware, but also in AES. So every machine with hardware on its own is useless if you are carrying it out. So this is our way to ensure maximal security for this medical data. And to explain you how we use this every day, we need some everyday vocabulary so that you know what we say when we're saying we're sending out a group. So Bubble is doing an dispatch ABC. Okay, I'm starting. Yes, I'm translating. We're talking about disponents or dispatchers. Those are our people in the office doing the radio and telephones, and they are handling the incoming radio. They also decide in which order cases are managed. They are responsible for all people that are on service at that moment, and answer the calls. They also do the whole record keeping. When we need a medical service car, then they do the whole management. They do the alarms, and all information goes over a central service. We have the runners. Those are people that you see with the red and blue vest that you can talk to, that are sent by us if there is a fire somewhere, a metaphorical fire. There are usually 2 or 3 angels. The red ones are the medical personnel. The blue ones are the technical and fire protection angels. But you can talk to everyone. Our technical personnel can do Band-Aids, and the Band-Aid people can do some technical stuff.
They recognize a fire when they see one. They solve problems.
What else do we have? We have services for the rooms. You've seen them when you've come to us. Those are the people that give out Band-Aids, ask you whether you need if you need a headache pill, and that you can who do the first introduction. We also talk about patients. A unit or group, that's everything. A runner group is a unit, and maybe I don't exactly have what I need, and then I just ask the angels that I have and build an ad hoc unit. I give them a radio and send them somewhere, give them a runner number, and then this is the way that units are created. I give them numbers, so we shouldn't be needing more than 10. It gives us problems with counting. They also get a status. That's a coding that you know from the medical services. You give them numbers from 1 to 9. 9 we don't use, so only until up to 8. And they tell us what this unit is doing right now. So it tells us whether they're free, if they're free for use, or if they have any tasks at the moment, or if they're on their way. The Einsatztagebuch or logbook. At the end of our day, we have to document what we did. That's a legal requirement. We have to say what happened, at what time, who did the protocol, and we have to do it very organized, and it has to be unchangeable. That's why we need paper. So you have to, if you want to change something, you have to cross it out in such a way that it's still readable, but you can't delete anything. So that's how that makes the case development more difficult.
Okay, and I, Toby, am one of the people that answer the telephone when you call 112 in this DECT network. 112 in Germany is normally the number for the emergency services. So why do we need this? People don't normally notify that they're about to stumble and then going to need medical treatment. So we have to have a kind of ad hoc response model. And then there are people like me who answer telephone calls and then decide who can help and who else will be needed, right? And we just thought up an example to show you how I and many other CERT angels who are dispatchers do the work. And we are going to construct an example case. Our example case is called Crash 42. I hope that that isn't actually someone's nick, someone in the room or wherever. But we just say that Crash 42 is rolling through 38C3 on their sofa. We have seen this. These are strange and funny vehicles. They do exist. And Crash, sadly, is somewhat unlucky because there is a cable in the way. And the sofa gets tangled up and tumbles over and crashes. And does what the name says, crashes involved in an accident with that sofa. And people see this because people at the Chaos Communication Congress normally are quite ready to help. And if there's a problem, they call us and say that a problem has occurred for us to come and help. So the phone rings with me at the number 112. And then using TORT, the system, I will now dispatch the operation. I don't know how I can see this on the projector. In terms of resolution, what we see here is a mask that I use if there is a new operation to get on the way and people to get going. So I'm noting down that there was an accident with a sofa. I'm noting the location and what happened roughly. The sofa got entangled in a cable. And someone reported us that there are several injured people, which is not good. It happened in front of heaven. And we are going to send, I decide, runner 1, my first running shift angel. And then I click create operation, and that's what it looks like then. And what you can also see in the background is that we have different kinds of operations. You may have seen in the lobby that there have been people that abseiled and worked on installations and were climbing. And that also was something that we were aware of, and we're modeling this as an operation so that we know what is going on. So we see that runner 1 has status 3, which means on the way to the location. And then runner 1 arrives and reports, hey, we have 3 people affected, and 2 are green, 1 yellow. So these are the so-called categories of viewing. So green are they have been hurt, but not badly hurt, and nothing, no threat to life or anything. Yellow would mean that this is a more severe injury. Maybe a doctor should take a look. Or a doctor should take a look, but it is not potentially life-threatening. That's why it's yellow. And fortunately, very, very fortunately, life-threatening injuries are very, very rare. And the runner has asked for reinforcements, so I decide to send runner 2 on the way. And you can see on the right the shift staffing that I have for the runners, which means that thanks to the Angel system import, we don't just know that we have these units, but we also know who is going to be in those units and which qualifications they have. We have a color coding for that, or using symbols rather, and that still is actually printed out on an extra sheet of paper, which is on the table there, but it will be used in the general display as well. So I created 3 treatment records, 1 in yellow and 2 in green. And also I set Blubbel going, who is my C service, and that is someone from the CERT management who is on call. And if there are larger cases, things that where I can't don't quite know how to continue and need advice, then I can call the C service, and this time I decide that Blubbel on location should lead the operation. You can do this. Yes, of course you can. We'll manage, she says. And so she goes off and gives me some report, telling me that 1 person can be looked after on site, and the other is also able to walk to CERT, meaning that they will be arriving in our CERT room, and the 3rd person actually needs to be carried because there is a suspicion of a broken bone. so that we have to transport them more carefully. They cannot walk anymore, so they will be carried to the CERT. And because we have to have people to do the carrying, I'm going to also send my standby people, and they will bring the stretcher to carry them. And of course, Blubber also reported that one of the patients can be treated on site after a short viewing and maybe distributing a cooling pack. So this case I can close immediately. And then this is how it looks. We now have 4 units bound in this operation, and that's why you can also see that I sent Blubber there. So that is, of course, a lot of information. And if I have people on site that see what's going on with their own eyes and can decide, that is a good thing. And then a new report comes in. The patients are now on the way, walking or on the stretcher, and runner 2 is still bound up in this operation. This is a technical angel. In this example, it happens to be Billy the Kid, and Xu as the first helper. They are looking after they are making sure that this stumbling block is going to be dealt with after the patients are sent on their way, and they will help to kind of clear off that sofa or whatever remains of it, because sadly the sofa didn't quite survive the accident either. Get this transported and to the lock so that it doesn't stand in the way. And of course, this has to be done in a fireproof way, because many vehicles are run through batteries, and it's not much fun to move such a thing. Also, petrol-driven sofas are not that great either. Just my hunch there. And I decided that I'm going to send a CERT premium staffing, another member who happened to be standing around and being idle. And I decided that I was going to send Dein Koks, who's sitting in the audience. And Blubel just told me, after seeing these example screenshots, interesting the way you think, I would have just called the lock and asked them if someone could help getting these remains cleared away, off the sofa, that is. But, well, this person was standing around, was completely relaxed and bored, so that's why I sent them, right? Okay. This is what the whole display now looks like. Everyone's been transported. The sofa transport, that took a so-called ad hoc unit, which leads to further units appearing in the list here, spawning in the view, and practically, fortunately, as they return, and I mark them as no longer being needed. In the background, a note is created that these people that I've just found on the loose, say, and that were nice enough, despite not having been entered for a shift, so that I can actually enter them in the angel system retrospectively, and they can collect their T-shirt hours too.
So the committed medical personnel, I take them out of the system, and the SOFA Transport Special Group, they bring this to the dock and get rid of it in a nice way. And the patients have arrived at our rooms, and we then get a message that the sofa has has arrived at our
and we've even looked after the state subsidy for trashing old vehicles. So that everything's been dealt with apart from this one thing. This is what you can see in the treatment room. You can see which places are available. and how many patients are waiting in the waiting room to be treated. And the first thing that our people at reception will do is to kind of view the patients and distribute them to the various places. Those that are more heavily injured are put to a more intensive, as we call it, intensive place, which is better equipped with various devices that we have available. For example, monitoring vital functions, medication if needed, or emergency measures. But in general, the term intensive care unit is just one with a bit more staffing. We are a paramedic service. So we have to say more than dinosaur plaster, unicorn plaster, right. And then we have these patients in the treatment room. The people in the room are looking after them, and in the next step they realize, let's move one slide, on one slide, what happened, it turns out that a doctor has looked at this patient and has recommended that this patient, with their consent, should be looked at in hospital. So this is what the doctor will log down, and these are the medical data that have to be secured, especially. Penny, you did say that, well, yes. The thing is, what you may see here is we're not even saving a name or storing a name of the patients. We have a number. We have these data that are secured, stored more safely, because something sensitive might be entered here. But we only do that if it serves a purpose. It might happen that a nickname is entered because the patient wishes for it to be entered. They may want to return the next day. But if you just need a piece of a cool pack or a plaster, then we may write down the name. You could also just enter any name. We do not store any real names. So if it's just a Band-Aid or a cooling pack, that is not necessary. But in general, you can see this on the next, sorry, no, not on the screen after the next, you will see that we are not storing personal data per se, unless it is really makes real sense. And regarding it making sense, let's go to the next slide. Blubbel, maybe you talk about this. This is the conventional documentation for when we have to send someone home. You know, we are dealing with entities outside. They want something as strange as clear names, legal names. If something might happen that makes us needing to contact the outside, then we document on paper. That is the interface. We do need the real name for that. But that then only exists in this one copy on paper. There's nothing more. And if you're interested in more, see how this looks like, you can ask us. But it's just a single sheet of paper with all this information, because we have to do that for legal reasons in contact with the outside world. This is when we actually register these data, which is absolutely required legally, sadly. And that contains all of this. And those outside, of course, need as absurd things as absurd as binary genders. That's not something we have. But if others need it, we can't change that. But this, in principle, stays on this paper. We don't want to have anything. We don't want to have anything to do with this data. I really do not want this data, and that is the one thing where I say that I, as a dispatcher, can't completely finish with this operation because having recommended to this example patient that they go to hospital and that they are driven there to investigate this suspicion of a broken bone, a fracture, then the doctor will then call for an ambulance for this patient. So I will call the Hamburg Fire Brigade in this case and tell them that someone is here who has to go to hospital, and then we have angels that will help show the ambulance where exactly it should go and how to get to the CERT the quickest way. And we will then put them at the respective entrances. So this is one of these single entries in the logbook that I will then add. Then I will call the Hamburg Fire Brigade and say what I have to say. Right.
Another thing we want to show, this mask contains all data that we save for a patient at maximum. So we save when did the person come to us, when did they arrive, and when did they leave, which category did we give them when they left. So what happened? So this person left after treatment. Who treated this person? What was the category given on site? What was the one keyword we gave them? And some details insofar they're necessary. Here in the angel did quite some extensive documentation. So we gave them a cooling pack and no further treatment was necessary. So in this case, you don't really have to note that down, but as you can see on the left, there's a long list of reasons that we have for letting people go. For example, if the list wasn't right, then we have to correct the database. There's just a wrong data item there. But this is what we save for people at maximum, and then we close the case. And this is what it looks like in the overview list. So in the list of closed cases, the patient data are minimal, so you can see that the details are not shown, but only a very generic keyword. And the metadata about this case and details are hidden behind the small icon, like opening the case, if you see this file symbol. And that's where you can, what Penny talked about, that only medical personnel and the dispatchers in exceptions can access, and that absolutely needs a two-factor authentication. So now over to you. Yes, thank you, Toby, for treating our Crash 42 so well. For the kids among you who want to play around with this, on their limited seats, who don't want to run around on a running sofa. On our website, you'll find our demo system, and we're going to invite you to play around with it, to try and break it, to experiment with it. Maybe you're also paramedics or in awareness teams or somewhere where you have cases that you can use this for. This runs in the development mode that I talked about earlier. Yeah, it's not encrypted with TLS and over everywhere and with localhost, and this is not a productive instance you should use. But look at it, give it a try, and if you have any security issues, contact us. We don't want to call it bug bounty, but if you play around with it and something breaks, then we may have 1 or 2 prizes for you that fit the CERT. So maybe if you want a pack of unicorn band-aids, then you can gain them by telling us how we can improve the system. Look at the system, tell us what the weaknesses are, then we can deploy it in a new way so you can play around with it even more. We are happy about everything you tell us that we could improve about the system, or if you say you have an organization you could use it with and have ideas how to manage even better with it. We're happy about all feedback. Or look at the repo on code work, contribute, help us to investigate this further. Congresses and other events we have can be made more secure with this. I have one more thing to ask for you. Tell people how they can contact us. I don't want you to call 112, even if that is technically trouble. Oh, yeah. So we're coming to an end. We're looking forward to your questions. I wrote down here how you can reach us, either via the website. There's also the contact email. There's the email address here. You can reach us over Mastodon or in the DECT network over vanity called Thought. So you don't have to go over the 112. And very shortly, our thanks to all the teams that have made it possible for us, that the CERT can work with this, that have worked with us and invested their time and developed some special features and so on. Please give them a special thanks and give them a hand, please.
Und einen kleinen Punkt hätte ich noch. Wir stehen hier natürlich auf der Bühne oder sitzen auf der Bühne.
Another little item. We are sitting here as representative of a development team that consists of more people than just the three of us. And these are too many people to list them individually, but you know who you are. You are awesome. Many, many thanks.
Ja, cool.
Cool. Thank you for this super interesting talk. We have time for a few questions, and I'm going to come down to you and ask if you have any questions from the audience. Do you have questions? I would have one. There is one here from the audience too.
Hallo, habt ihr irgendwelche
Hi.
Aufbewahrungspflichten?
Do you have any requirements that you have to keep records or how they are accessed?
Well, yeah, the data I think it should be on the website next to the link. There are accounts for test user, test medic, test dispo. They have the fantastic password test.
Weil ich nehme an, du hast nach den juristischen Pflichten gefragt. Nick mal. Medizinische Daten, 10 Jahre.
Medical records have to be kept for 10 years.
Well, medical records have to be kept for 10 years, but that only applies to that one paper that I showed you. And that's why we do it this way. And the logbook that we showed you, we print this, sign it, and that goes into a safe at the CCCV, the institution organizing the Congress. And we forgot to say this. We print this after the event. It goes to the safe, as she said. And once we've slept Congress off in January because, well, after the system's been shut down, everything's encrypted. So from the 6th of January, we throw away the key and the data stops to exist, but will give us 5 days time to really be rested and make sure that everything's okay. So these data exist 2 weeks at most. Next question.
Danke euch. Habt ihr einen Wunsch, wenn man die 112 anruft, was man in welcher Reihenfolge wie sagen soll?
If we call the 112, what we tell you in what order?
I could start with the 5 Ws, but there's just one. Check that the dispatcher has heard you and wait in case of doubt. They will ask the right questions. They are really well educated.
That's really good to know. Next question. Yes, thank you. I have a rather, not technical, but rather for you, Blubbel. I'm wondering, why do you have documentation requirements if you're not putting down names or anything?
Well, like I said, the documentation obligation just refers to these papers, and these papers we have to write if we contact the outside world, and then we do need the real names. Everything else that we document in those logbooks is just about the operations, not the patients, and that these tables for an overview, they are just about our operations, and the obligations require printing these out and saving them and signing them, and that is what goes to the safe.
Yes, that's what I understood, that you're only noting down real names when you can't have contact to the outside. But here in an event of this size, a medical service has to be there, or an emergency service. So if you have the requirement to have an emergency service,
well, the Hamburg Fire Brigade knows that there's more than 500 people here.
Well, internally, you don't have the requirement to document those with real names. So that's my question, really. Why? What are you really?
I'll just offer an answer. You seem to be very interested, so I'm offering that you have this deep interest for the legal component or perspective. You can find me from 11 p.m. at CERT. I'll be on duty then. I'll be happy to answer questions, but I would like to leave the space for others, if that's okay with you. And I think one part of the answer is statistics and planning for material and personnel for the next event. That is another thing.
Gut. Wir haben noch mal eine Frage.
Okay, further questions.
Ja, erstmal vielen Dank für den Vortrag und für eure Arbeit, auch hier auf dem Kongress. Wir haben ja jetzt gesehen, ihr habt ja den Prozess umgestellt.
You have changed this process from sticky notes to digital processes. Have you improved the services, or is it only an alignment to have the sticky notes? You know, have you done your due diligence, or?
The hour of truth. Have I made your life simpler? Well, no, yes. Well, the first introduction, of course, takes time, and we had a lot of education to do, a lot of lessons to learn. Many things are better, and there are still things, and that's always going to be the case, that we keep on paper, because nothing replaces a 3-meter map on the wall of the site. That simply cannot be done in any other way. Overall, I believe that when we are really well educated, there'll be lots of advantages, and when we had the first introductions, it actually didn't get slower, which I expected. So equal service level is a very, very good result for now. Yes, also for us as the development team, that was the biggest praise we could get. When we did a trial run 6 weeks ago, to have the medical people tell me, cool, this hasn't got any slower than paper, I know something. This is not what I know from my workplace, my regular employment.
Zuerst vorweg, vielen Dank für eure Arbeit. Ihr genießt meine absolute Hochachtung als CERT als Ganzes, die hier rumlaufen und auch alle, die im Backend dran arbeiten.
Has my respect, and you're doing a great thing.
I
have a question that please don't interpret them as blaming, but this example with the cable, where the person stumbled with 3 or 4 people that you sent there, how many cases of this kind can you work with in parallel?
You don't officially want to hear the answer. Let me put it like this. We are a small paramedic service, and not many people are in service at the same time, but we are at chaos. We have angels, and if really, really something were to happen, then we have this beautiful team which is called POC, which gave us a round call service, And if we have to issue such a call, we will have to take care not to be squeezed in our corridor with all the numbers arriving.
Super, haben wir noch. Ich glaube, wir haben noch ein paar Fragen. Wir haben auch noch
Yeah, I think
Zeit.
so.
Wie sieht es denn beim Signal Angel aus? Signal
What does
Angel,
the
hast du
Signal
Fragen
Angel
für
say?
uns aus
Do
dem
you have
Internet?
a question for us from the internet?
Keine, okay, gut.
No. Okay,
Ich
right.
gebe mal das Mikrofon an dich.
Okay, I'm giving the microphone to
Genau,
you.
man hat ja vorhin eine
Well, we've seen in the overview the units.
Wie kommt
I'm interested in
Status des Trupps zurück?
how does the how is the status transmitted to the system? Because you know it from other radio communication, you know, it's hard.
Right, yes, this is actually manually translated as of now through reports through telephone. We have arrived. That is then manually entered. And of course, we are at chaos. And you make a first step in a certain direction. And there are people that they build receivers. We have the POC thing. We have these telephones. They could, in theory, report a status. We have teams that start building mobile location devices for the navigation people. So I fear that next Congress, this will quite escalate. At the moment, it's manual, but we'll see in how many different ways we will record this in the future.
An der Stelle tatsächlich,
My
den ich mal dazu
favorite
gehört habe,
saying
wir sind
here
im
is,
Chaos, das lässt sich doch
we're here
overengineeren.
at chaos, we can over-engineer this.
Sehr, sehr schön. Ich habe da, glaube ich, mal
Very
eine
nice.
Frage von mir.
I have a personal question.
Touchscreen optimiert, das sah so
Is this touchscreen optimized?
Partially. In fact, the views for these dispatchers are not touchscreen optimized because there isn't much sense to have that. There is a complex surrounding. You have the nav map in between. But what you've seen partly dealing with the patient's treatment mask, that is more or less touchscreen optimized. And in fact, the shifts in the surgeries have been given to tablets where they can just enter. I've just given them a Band-Aid and then I press a button. Simple operations like that can be done by a touchscreen so that they don't have to come back to the reception yet again and have them enter this. So that speeds things up quite a bit for not having, for every little piece of Band-Aid, just dealing with it with a few taps. And we were also thinking that maybe a large button could be connected that deals with the whole workflow in one big push of that button. In part, it is touchscreen optimized. And we've taken care, which you can partially see. These hearts, for example, we used colors. We've tried hard to have good accessibility. It starts with minimum size of buttons and doesn't stop with us seeing how many hearts are filled and what the colors are. There was a specialist. So in systems like this, without a specialist, there are limits, but we had an inclusive font, for example. We did a few things. And again, a huge thanks to Silly, who's sitting there and has looked after all the accessibility issues.
Ja, super interessant. Haben wir
Very
noch Fragen
Any more
aus dem
questions?
Publikum? Ich glaube, alle beantwortet. Wenn noch welche sind, kommt gerne nach dem
there are
Talk noch
more
nach vorne
questions,
und
come
fragt
here
mal im
after the
Detail,
talk
testet die
and
Demo aus.
ask them in detail,
Wir sind
test the demo,
ihr seid alle sehr gespannt auf
and
Feedback und freut euch, wenn es beim 39.
you're very interested in feedback and you're looking forward to 39C3 that it's improved. Thank you to Tobias G., Penny Lane, and Blubbel. And thanks for listening to